Constitution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. Penna Dexter with me, and she will be here for the entire 3 hours. And I might just mention a little bit later, Brad Fisk will join us. 4th day of our Truth Team Week, and we're going to spend a fair amount of time today, Penna, talking about some of these religious liberty cases. If for no other reason, then we're not going to just wait till Kelly shows up on Friday, because they just are issues that are of real concern to some of our listeners. And, of course, we've been talking about socialism, clear and present danger. And if you want to lose your religious liberty, just go to a socialist economy, right?
Well, that's right. And, you know, socialism isn't a word that we were comfortable using, really anyone in America, for decades, all during my growing up. But now it is, and it's appealing to some people. So let me just say at the outset here as we start the show, because I haven't been in this week as this has been the topic, that I am so glad that Point of View is majoring on this issue, because it's really it's the threat of the future. It encompasses a lot of the other things we talk about. And it's incumbent on us, I think, here at Point of View to educate another generation that doesn't really understand that threat.
And again, we're going to be talking about your commentary on the Gen Z surveys in just a minute. But in case you are just joining us today or have not heard some of the other programs, we had Dinesh D'Souza and his wife, Debbie D'Souza, who was born in Caracas, Venezuela. So she told us a story about what Venezuela was like, what happened after Hugo Chavez took over. Of course, we've had Gary Bauer on. Of course, he's always very articulate. Robert Knight's actually written a book on socialism. And if that's not enough, in about an hour from now, we're going to have a chance to hear from Dr. Jay Richards, who, of course, has written on this subject, but also just recently did a debate with a socialist at Notre Dame University.
Yes, and Jay Richards is so smart, and yet he brings things. He reminds me of you, Kerby. He brings things down to a level that the rest of us can understand. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think one of the things that some people will say is that the socialism or the socialist policies that we advocate are not Venezuela. They're not Cuba. They're not the Soviet Union.
Yes.
They'll use Sweden, but we can argue that that's not really a socialist state. But they're European socialism, and they try to glamorize it. And even there, I think we can make the case that it's failing in some of the countries where it's been tried.
Even so, Sweden is a good example, because I did a commentary a while back, and a lot of that was based on some of the Dennis Prager material, but also some other material that came from a variety of other individuals that said, you know, even a Swedish historian said, first of all, we're not socialist. Second of all, when we tinkered with it, it was a disaster. And the only reason we are doing so well is because before we did this social experiment, which we got rid of, we had a free market. So again, I think it's going to be a good conversation with Jay Richards. I just mentioned, for those of you that like to hear the third hour, you may not be able to hear it in your local station, but of course we do a 3-hour broadcast. Jim Denison will be with us as well. Going to talk about the film Unplanned, because he's written about that. Also about an individual that wrote into the Washington Post the other day, had given up on his faith. So we'll talk about apologetics and some of those issues as well. But before we get to religious liberty, I don't want to ignore what's happening at the border, and we did spend some time talking about that the other day with Gary Bauer. But I thought Rich Lowry, the piece we posted just the other day, said, when historians look back to this era, they'll wonder why we insisted on outsourcing our border control to a foreign country. And the reason he makes that statement is, in some respects, we're dependent right now on the president of Mexico, who's known as AMLO, which stands for Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, to actually do something that we should be doing. And I love his line here. It's not that border control has been tried and failed. It hasn't been tried. Thanks to court decrees, congressional enactments, We don't permit ourselves to quickly return minors from Central American countries or to detain them so they get released into the society, and we end up with the problem that is accentuating all the time. And if Gary Bauer's estimates are correct, we could end up by the end of this year with 1.5 million illegal aliens, additional illegal aliens in this country. And so the rush to the border right now has been very significant. And for our listeners in the state of Texas, I live in the city of Allen, and last night they had an ICE attempt, and it was successful to actually turn in 280 people who are from Latin American countries, all of whom are here illegally. And I thought, Penna, it was kind of interesting because this is a company that used to be in New Jersey, probably left New Jersey because they wanted to come to a low tax rate, but they brought those values with them and said, well, the best way to save money is we'll just hire all these people illegally. So not only are those 280 being investigated, the company's policies are being investigated as well.
Well, what happens to those people? Because that's part of the problem is, you have people seeking asylum coming across the border.
Yes.
And, they're asking for it. So we have certain laws that they can be detained, but they can't be detained separately from their kids, or, that's been a really bad thing to criticize President Trump with. So they end up being released after a short amount of time and expected to come back for their hearing, and they don't come back. They're just here. So, we have all of that. So there's a sense in which there's a lot of laws that we have that contribute to the problem.
That's right.
That could be changed. And, I hear President Trump when he says, let's close the border, because he's so frustrated. He's not getting the help from Mexico. He's not getting the help from the Congress. And but closing the border would also be a disaster for Texas because there's so much trade and business that goes on across the border.
You talked about leaving the truck lanes open, but everything else closing down. But, of course, you've heard everybody say, well, we won't be able to get our avocados, and that would ruin our guacamole. But
it would be sad. But
but the point you make is a good one. It's one that Rich Lauer makes. Congress could fix all of this in an afternoon with few key changes in the law. But Donald Trump has a Nancy Pelosi problem, he says, much more than he has a problem with Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, because she is unmovable. And so as a result, the president of the United States has had to try to work with the president of Mexico. And actually, give credit where credit is due, the president of Mexico has been a little more helpful than some people might have expected, given the fact that he also seems to flirt with some of these socialist ideas as well. So we'll see where it goes.
Yes, and speaking of socialism, if this permanent new set of people that will be in the country, this could be a great number of Democrat voters down the road. And certainly people that have great needs for public policies and different federal programs and things. And so that just moves our country further to the left. So we're in that topic today. So immigration is definitely part of that.
I just thought I'd mention it. Again, we are not ignoring it, but at the same time, this theme is on the issue of socialism. But I thought just for a few minutes, we would get into this issue of religious liberty. One of the articles we posted is entitled Anti-Christian Bigotry. And it's interesting because it's written by David French. Of course, we've quoted from him quite often. It has to do with Judge Brian Hagedorn, who was vilified in all sorts of ways. As a matter of fact, one of the questions that was even raised is, can a Bible-believing Christian still hold office in the state of Wisconsin? Well, apparently the voters thought yes, but it gets us into some of the conversation we've had even yesterday with Jonathan Saenz and others, and conversation we've had with Penna and Kelly and others about the fact that every time we turn around, there's some kind of lawsuit or some kind of regulation, some kind of prohibition of individuals exercising their First Amendment rights. So we're going to come back and talk about that. And most importantly, before we end this hour, we want to spend some time challenging you to consider what you might do to join the Truth Team. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
On my radio program, I'm always looking for ways to help listeners develop discernment. With so many sources of news and information and so many claims being made by pundits and politicians, it's helpful to know how to sort them out. Here are 2 tools for your discernment toolbox. First, be skeptical when someone on the left makes a sweeping claim. Dennis Prager goes even further. He says you should always assume the left is lying to you. He observes that truth is a liberal value and truth is a conservative value, but people on the left say whatever advances their immediate agenda, power is their moral lodestar. Therefore, truth is always subservient to it. He applies this to a number of stories ranging from the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy ideas to the claim that college campuses have a culture of rape to warning that we have 12 years left because of global warming. In each case, he argues that the left lies about the issue. Now, you might find that statement too extreme, which is why I add a second tool of discernment that usually helps confirm the first. Pay less attention to what someone on the left says, pay more attention to what someone on the left does. Let's look at two examples Dennis Prager mentions. The left claims that our universities are saturated with a culture of rape, but if they really believe that, they would never send their daughters to college. In their hearts, they really know that this claim is untrue. What about global warming? Do people who warn us about the dangers of climate change act like it is an existential threat? Most people issuing these warnings have a carbon footprint vastly larger than ours. If they really are that concerned, we would expect them to be the first to change their lifestyle. If you want to know what is true, use some of these tools of discernment to check out some of the news and claims being made today. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hello, this is Pastor Jack Graham commending the ministry of Kerby Anderson and Point of View. Kerby is one of my favorite people personally, and I'm so respectful of his ability to take the issues, speak to them biblically, and communicate in a way that we can all understand. His program, his show, the ministry is vital in our culture in order that we may proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ and teach people God's way of living. I want to encourage you as a listener to support this program financially and prayerfully. And I know Point of View and Kerby Anderson personally would be greatly appreciative. I'm Kerby's pastor, and it is a privilege to know him and to be a part of this life and ministry. We support this ministry wholeheartedly.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Back once again, and don't forget that this is the week of Truth Team. And so again, for your gift of as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, you can be part of the Truth Team. And like I said, for as little as, we've talked about a number of other ways in which you can get involved as well, because if you join at, for example, the $50 a month level, you'll receive these booklets. Here's the one by Penna Dexter on public education. Here's some others. As a matter of fact, the one we're going to talk about today, Capitalism and Socialism, Constitutional Interpretation. That sounds like something we'll do with Kelly Shackelford. And so don't forget, as you go to the website, that is a great place for you to see what the various levels are and the thank you gifts that we send to you. Of course, everyone that gives, well, if they are part of the Truth Team, receives a Bible stick. And in the next hour, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But I'm even looking this hour, since some of you have been hearing this program from 12 to 1 now. It's been kind of our experiment. We would love to hear from some of you that have been listening to the program. You can either give us a call at 800-347-5151, or you can visit the website pointofview.net. And Penna, we're just asking people to give whatever they think they might be able to give, 100% participation, but we'll leave the amount up to them and God.
You know, a lot of people want to know what they can do, or they're frustrated because they can't do anything, and they see things happening in the country that they don't agree with or like or are afraid of. And this is something you can do. Everybody can help be part of the truth team. And, you know, I want to go back a minute to Pastor Jack Graham, who talked about us at the beginning of this segment. He is one minister of the gospel who has always been concerned about the country and about the issues facing us. Ever since I have known of him, he's at Prestonwood, a big church here in Dallas. And, you know, people like him, pastors who listen to the program, who learn, even in small churches across the country, who learn about what the threats are to Christians and Christianity and to religious liberty, which is just looming. It's becoming a bigger threat. I mean, that's one of the reasons we exist. We've always been instrumental in helping educate them. And so that's one reason to support Point of View. And I'm so grateful for him, you know, just giving those accolades. And I know he does appreciate us because, you know, we help him. And there's not a lot of other places for people to get this kind of information. And these booklets are, I mean, I have a little set of them at home because I can pull one out and I can just get a short, quick sort of tutorial on an issue. And if I'm speaking with someone, trying to make a point, there it is. And so, folks, you can have those very handy. They're small. They're packed with information.
And I might just mention that, you know, in some respects, Jack Graham is in the tradition of the Patriot preachers, and there's one of those stories right there that you can learn about as well. So, again, we appreciate those of you in ministry. And this hour, I would hope that some of you might want to give to Point of View, and as you do so, you might say, I give in honor of my pastor, in honor of my church, or something like that. So again, that number, 800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. We are ready to take your phone calls, and certainly you can do the same thing by going to the website. Well, one of the articles we've posted here, Penna, and you had a chance to look at it as well, by a friend, David French, and it has to do with a man by the name of Brian Hagedorn. Now, he's up there in Wisconsin, but I thought it was illustrative of the fact that in this campaign, because he's a Christian, there were people literally asking the question, can a Bible-believing Christian still hold office in the state of Wisconsin? And so in some respects, when you go to California, you go to Colorado, you go to Wisconsin, you go to Vermont, wherever it might be, there is almost the assumption now that if you're a Christian and you have deeply held religious beliefs, that should just invalidate you from being involved in these activities. And so I want to come back in just a minute and talk about what they want to do in the state of Texas to try to protect some of those people.
Well, Brian Hagedorn, one of his sins was to have founded a Christian school that, and this is a quote from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, allows bans on teachers, students, and parents in gay relationships. In other words, they hold to an Orthodox Christian view of sexuality in their school, something that most Christian schools hold to. And, of course, this has now made him, really resulted in him being labeled a bigot by the media. And certain business groups who would have otherwise supported him have abandoned him because of that. So it makes you now toxic in the political and business world if you are a Bible-believing Christian. And so the Texas bill is trying to prevent that. We have a lot of things in Texas going on to try to kind of defend against that. But there in Wisconsin, there's another big part of the story there about him. Well, he was very narrowly elected to the Supreme Court, and it may be so narrow that they have to have a recount. But
right.
But in this state where they just ousted the conservative governor Scott Walker in the last election, so that and that is a state that went for Trump. But people are saying no, it's not going to go for Trump again. It's becoming more liberal. But this election may have given people pause, and the Democrats are not so complacent about that state, I think, after this particular vote, because even with all that bad media and all those accusations of bigotry on the part of certain business groups that should support a Republican and a conservative, he still won. He still won. So Wisconsin may not be all lost to the Republicans in 2020.
And what we're seeing is, you can pull this one with then what happened to Karen Pence. You might remember the vice president and his wife, the second lady, if you want to say that, was going to be at Emmanuel Bible Church. I've spoken in that church. I'm familiar with that. And that was enough for people to be critical of her because they also hold to an Orthodox view about marriage. And so it is interesting that here, because he helped start a school that holds to an Orthodox view about sexuality, that's enough for people to say, well, then he's just not qualified to serve on the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. We then, of course, have the case in San Antonio where not only do they say, well, we don't like Chick-fil-A because of some of the statements they've made, but also because they support groups like, are you ready for this? Again, Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the, again, Salvation Army. And so you see there's a sense in which sometimes the gay activists are so overplaying their hand, but it illustrates, again, why they want to have this Texas Professionals Protection Act, because we're just seeing more and more, whether you're a baker, whether you're a florist, whether you're a photographer, whether you're an attorney, whether you're an individual that is a doctor, whether you're doing counseling or a teacher, anybody that has to get a license, and even hairdressers and people like that have to get licenses, we want to at least protect you because there are individuals that are just going to come after anybody that they might disagree with.
And a lot of times it's because it has nothing to do with what you are doing. It's just because you hold those views, you shouldn't be allowed to serve the public in any way. And this bill is SB 17. It was passed by the Senate in Texas this week. The Senate voted 19-12, and it was on a bipartisan basis. And it states no Texas professional should fear. Well, this is stated by Nicole Hudgens, who's at Texas Values.
Right.
No Texas professional should fear the government taking away their livelihood because of their faith. And so this particular bill is called the Texas Professionals Protection Act, and you can't have your license, according to this bill, revoked or denied because of your sincerely held religious beliefs. And it's a good bill. Now it has to go through the Texas House.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons we ask you to join with us as part of the Truth Team is because we're giving you news and information you probably hear nowhere else. You probably don't even know about some of these pieces of legislation, probably don't even know about that election in Wisconsin. Maybe you've heard about the Chick-fil-A thing because that started about a week ago as a local story and became a national story. But if you value the kind of perspective we give here, Penna, I'm encouraging people to give to this ministry.
Absolutely. And this is the time to do it. And you can do it by calling. And the number, it's 347-5151. Is that the right number? I walked in here today for the first time. I want to make sure it's still the right number. And just say you want to be a member of the Truth Team. And then you will be a part of a team. It's a team that really cares about America. And we want to make sure that enough others do that we can protect some of the things that we hold dear.
We're going to take a break, but again, we'll get that number again from Bob Allen. It's real simple, 1-800-347-5151, or just go to the website, pointofview.net. We'd love to hear from you.
In America, the time for sitting on the sidelines is over. We've thought that insanity could only last so long, that our flirtation with ideas that have failed over and over would reach its end. But the longer we wait for common sense to return, the worse things get. Today, we don't even know the difference between men and women. People are seriously proposing a government takeover of just about everything: our cars, our food, our homes and offices. In a nation built on hard work, sacrifice, and self-reliance, a shocking percentage of our neighbors now look to Washington, D.C. to do just about everything. The impulse towards socialism is a clear and present danger to our survival. So what are you going to do about it? I know you can't do it alone, but together, with you as a member of the Point of View Truth Team, we can make an impact. Time is running out on our matching challenge that ends tonight at midnight. Join now online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Join now. Point of View will continue after this.
You're listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continuing our conversation today, Penna Dexter in studio with us. And don't forget that in about a half an hour, we're going to have Jay Richards with us as we're going to be talking about socialism, and we'll get back into that in just a few minutes. Jim Denison will be with us in the third hour, but we just wanted to focus on a couple of issues that you needed to know about here in the state of Texas, as well as nationwide. But one of the things I always love to do when you come on Fridays, Penna, is to spend some time talking about the various commentaries you've written. And since you're with us today, let's mention that tomorrow you will see on the website this one on the survey of the Gen Z. And that is really striking because when you start looking at these numbers, one of the things we pointed out just the other day is they will actually have increased enough and actually get to the age 18 by the time of the 2020 election. There'll be a slightly higher percentage of Gen Z, those will be people born after 1996, who will be able to vote in this election compared to those who are declining, because some of them are no longer alive, in the builder generation, those born at the end of World War II. So more and more of the electorate is going to be the millennial generation, so-called Gen Y, and the Gen Z generation, which is why we do what we do here at Point of View. So tell us the good or bad news about what Lifeway has found when they've begun to survey some of those individuals.
Yeah, it's mixed news. And mixed news to me is good news right now because the news about younger generations can be very bad. That's why Point of View has a millennial roundtable. That's why we try to talk about the trends in the millennial and now Gen Z generation. And there's this survey out from Lifeway Research, and it says that, well, a lot of surveys have told us this. Young people stop going to church after high school, usually when they go off to college or some kind of a job. They stop going to church.
Yes.
And this survey was done in 2017, and it does show that 66% of Americans stopped attending church on a regular basis at least for a year after turning 18. And this is down slightly, that's the good news, from 10 years before, when 70% said they dropped out of church at age 18. So what's happening here? Well, a lot of it, according to the survey as they broke it down, isn't because they don't believe in God anymore or never believed in God. It's just that they're moving off to college and they're just not going to church. Maybe they're not finding a church or even looking. That's not that important to them at that point in their life. Ed Stetzer, who used to be executive director of Lifeway, he's now at Wheaton College, but he was at Lifeway a long time, and he looked at this and he said, it's not that most rejected the church. They simply lose track of the church, stop seeing it as important to their lives. And I think that's what presents us with a great opportunity.
Right.
Because those young people in 18 to 22, that age, I mean, they're going off to college sometimes and getting liberal, socialist indoctrination. The church has a great opportunity. Point of View has a great opportunity. Any ministry that deals with the minds of young people has a great opportunity to help them understand why it's important to combine their faith now with their more adult attitudes about things. And then there's another survey that was a little bit positive, I thought, in my mind. It was actually an article out of the New York Times. Family Research Council pointed it out. Support of LGBT rights drops among Republicans under 30. That's the headline. And this was a large survey done by Public Religion Research. And it says that a majority of this group does think that LGBT Americans should get special privileges. They support non-discrimination, SOGI laws, and all of those things. So they did. But the number that supports these LGBT special privileges is dropping, and it's down 9% in the last 3 years. And Tony Perkins at Family Research Council think it's because of the Obergefell decision that brought us same-sex marriage. They overreached and they've weaponized the decision. It was supposed to allow for people to still follow their faith, and it's been instead used to target people's faith in so many ways. So these kids, they're seeing that. And so some of these young people are actually turning against that overreach, and that's good news. And that's another place where we can take off and jump on that and try to further educate them.
And again, I see a connection between this survey we're just talking about and what we just talked about a minute ago, because the argument, as you well know, Penna, for many years was, look, we just want to get married. You know, it's not fair that those of you that have opposite sex attractions keep those of us with same sex attractions to be married. And so the argument was always sort of pleading as we're victims. But the moment, as you well know, the moment that the Obergefell decision came down from the Supreme Court, the next day, then it was now on to transgender rights and things like that. And now it's on to you can't actually be a Christian and be a florist, a photographer, a baker, maybe an innkeeper, a student, a counselor, because if you don't affirm everything that we have as part of the LGBTQ and all the other letters you want to use agenda, then we're going to call you a bigot. And I think that's what's happened. The younger generation say, wait a minute, we were all for this in terms of tolerance, but we are kind of in this live and let live kind of philosophy. You know, okay, I don't necessarily agree with your lifestyle, but I'm not going to tell you you can't have your lifestyle. But when you turn around and tell me that I'm wrong because I don't affirm your lifestyle, that's why I think some of it's starting to boomerang the other way, don't you think?
Yeah, they're smart. I mean, they really understand now that it's been turned against them. I think they're beginning to understand it more. And that is so good, because as we move into these young people being able to vote down the road, being able to influence public policy, and certainly we have the millennial generation who is now coming into important jobs and influential positions, that they begin to understand and see this. And, you know, most of them were open-minded about it, but now they're seeing it used against them as a weapon. And, you know, if they're Bible-believing Christians, or even if they aren't, a lot of conservative young people are just people who are trying to live their lives, see this, and they think that that's not right. That's not what we want.
One of the other things you said there, and of course, it also is a quote from Ed Stetzer, who I certainly follow on a regular basis, is that they're really they don't see religion as important. And that's what we found first with the millennial generation, as you know, where I spend a good portion of my time at Pro Ministries. Steve Cable, working with Barna Research, did the most extensive survey ever done of born-again millennials. And before that, Lifeway did the most extensive survey ever of millennials, general, secular millennials. And if you look at those two studies, you realize that except for the born-again evangelical millennials, the rest of the millennials, it's not like they're against religion. They just don't think about it. It's just not part of their lives. And one of the fastest growing demographics in the millennial generation are the nones, the people that, when filling out a survey, put down atheist, agnostic, or no preference. They just kind of none of the above. Well, if that was true for the millennial generation, it's even more true now for Gen Z, or what some people call the iGen generation. This is the first generation that are digital natives. They've grown up at a time in which there has always been smartphones. There have always been computers. There has always been the internet. And because of that, they think even less about religion. And to use a Southern phrase, I'm fixing to spend a lot of money again on a survey that we're going to be doing at Pro Ministries, in, again, probably the largest survey ever done of the iGen generation, or the Gen Z. And I can predict right now what's going to happen, and that is they just don't think about it. You know, they don't. They in many cases,
they're not hostile. They just don't think about it.
Yeah, in many cases they didn't grow up in church, or even if they did, they left church and they left it behind. And so they don't see it as relevant, which I think comes back to a key point I'm going to make for just a minute. They're not going to come to your church. If you're listening right now and you're saying, well, how do we get these people into church? Well, they're probably not going to come. But they may be listening to radio. They may be going out on the internet. They may go to YouTube channels. They may ask questions of their smartphone, which are all ministries we've developed here at Point of View, so that we can reach them in ways that perhaps we'll never be able to reach them by encouraging them to come into the church. So we need to help them see the connection between what they believe and what the Bible has to say. And that connection is something we talk about every day here on Point of View.
Yeah, and we need to do it in ways that are appealing to them. I mean, long-form radio, a lot of them are not listening to that, even though we love our opportunity to have lots of time every day to talk to people and really unpack issues. But we also have to take parts of that and do shorter pieces that are packed with information, like the booklets that we're offering to folks that join the Truth Team.
Or things on the website.
Our commentaries, our viewpoints that we put out. so that and really, that's easier for everyone to learn something that's presented in a shorter form. It's great to be able to unpack it, and that would be ideal if they would have the time to sit and listen. It'd be like a university class every day with Kerby Anderson. But you've done things at Point of View, and you, Kerby, have done so much to make it palatable to another generation. Fortunately, you're a person who's always seen the next generation as key, and you've always seen what they need. You've always been able to measure the trends, and I love that about your ministry. And now it's really paying dividends here at Point of View.
Well, let me again encourage you to, first of all, visit our website, pointofview.net. Tomorrow you'll have the Gen Z surveys. I want you to pass it on to others, but if you appreciate even the conversation we just had, join with us. Again, the pledge line, 800-347-5151. The website, pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I'm actually on my way to work, and I listen to you guys' program every day on the way to work. It just gives me a lot to think about.
Thank you. First of all, let me say I listen to y'all's show every day as much as I'm able, and I really appreciate the topics and conversation that y'all bring to the fore.
I always wanted to give because I thought that Point of View really brings a lot of things in out here in the open that you don't hear anywhere else.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Back once again, Penna Dexter in studio with me. And, of course, Brad Fisk has joined us as well.
Yes.
Again, let me just mention for a minute, Penna Dexter's piece on Gen Z surveys. Very good summary. And, again, I'm actually giving you a preview because it actually will not be posted till tomorrow. But, by the way, as you join with us, there are some real benefits. And one of those is you can sign up to get the Viewpoints. And my Viewpoints commentary shows up in your inbox Monday through Friday. Penna Dexter's on Saturday. And so that one will be there, and I encourage you to read it, to pass it on to a pastor and some others. But while you're on the website there's a place where you can click on the button that says Join the Team Now. And, Brad, we want people to join the team right this minute.
We do indeed. For $1 a day. Can you imagine? $1 a day. That's $30 a month, $360 for the year. And we are excited to have you join the Truth Team at that giving level. Any of that and above. And we are just inviting you to stand with us. Those are such critical gifts in that they come in throughout the year. And you can join the Truth Team right now. It's a 2 to 3 minute call. You don't have to have the money in hand. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. And I'm going to say there's more.
There's more.
We're
Okay.
ready for more. One more thing. It'll be matched.
Oh, good.
Your dollar for dollar will be matched. We got a $7,700 match on the table, and you can carve out your piece of that simply by joining the Truth Team or giving a gift of any amount, because up to that, you can give $1,000, you can give $5. It's, like you said earlier, full participation, and let the Lord lead. So 800-347-5151, a match challenge on the table. So every dollar you give is doubled, becomes $2 a day. It becomes $720 for the year.
And again, one of the things that we've talked about, Penna, so often is we try to cover so many different issues. And you know as well as I do, having joined with the organization a number of years ago, that very quickly it began to expand. People don't know, but originally Penna was hired to be dealing with the women's issues. And after about 2 weeks, she said, wait a minute, everything's a woman's issue. And Penna is able to cover just a vast array of topics. And that is so necessary because we do cover a lot of topics. And as you pointed out just a minute ago, it's a long-form format. So we not only cover a lot of topics, but we go into significant depth.
And we get to discuss some of the issues with callers who come in with questions or their own comments. I just want to mention that as far as joining the Truth Team, and Brad mentioned $30 a month. And, you know, in my house, I'm the one that does the giving. I'm the one that pays the bills and all of that. And I bet that's true in a lot of the houses across the country. And even if it's not true in your house, think about what a bigger gift than $30 a month. Think of what a $100 a month gift would do. A lot of you have an amount of money you give every month to the Lord's work. We are doing the Lord's work, ladies and gentlemen. So we should be a significant part of, I think, that giving. If you think we're doing a good job here at Point of View, be part of it. You can be part of it by joining our Truth Team. And there's a couple things that you get that everybody else may not. You get the...
She said that with a little gleam in her eye there.
Well, I love this. First of all, you get the Bible stick with the Bible on it. And that's such a great tool. And then you get 2 more of those to send to people who are deployed in the U.S. military.
That's right.
So you're able to multiply.
That's correct. It's the Word of God, and it fits in the palm of your hand. And there's a military version of the Bible stick, and those go first priority to those that are deployed. So there's 2 of them that you release if you come in at $100 a month or more. And there's also a disc in there with the entire Bible on it for the family. So they connect the family to the soldier who's overseas. So what an incredible thing to do at $100 a month or more. And, oh, by the way, it becomes $200 a month because of the match challenge. So that's 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. 5151. I'm so excited about this. This is great.
Well, again, I just showed it a minute ago for those of you watching online. Here's the DVD or the MP3. And that goes to the family so they can follow along. And so, in a sense, they get this. This is military grade, too. You'll notice it looks a little different because they can't have the button, the light going on. There is everything that the military allows.
It's military spec.
So this is just an incredible benefit. So not only are you benefiting, and not only do you get these booklets, and by the way, here's one by Penna Dexter on public education, right? You know, so there's a good illustration of some of the material that we're writing every single month. So I would encourage some people to think about $100 a month.
Yes.
That is a stretch for some, but I also recognize we have listeners right now that could give $100 a month, and that would push us so much further along.
Oh, yeah.
And $100 a month, Penna, becomes what? $200 a month.
We have a generous match, and we need to actually take care of that pretty quickly, don't we, Brad?
We do. It expires the end of today, so we don't want to sit around and wait and let $1 of that go away. Again, that number is 800-347-5151. You can also give online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Or we have open lines right now for you at 800-347-5151.
You know, the other thing we've talked about in the past is just the individuals that have decided to run for school board, for city council, for Congress. Penna, you might remember back in the 1990s, we interviewed some, at that time, a homemaker by the name of Michelle Bachman. Do you remember that story?
I sure do.
Yeah.
She was a homemaker, but she was involved in public education in her state in Minnesota. And she began to get more knowledgeable about some of the curriculum, go around the state, talk about it. And all of this was informed by what she was learning on Point of View. She married into a family that were already Point of View listeners, and she began listening. And then she ran for state office, and then she ended up running for U.S. Congress, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, again, we have had individuals starting pregnancy resource centers, various Christian
schools.
schools and things of that nature. And, of course, we'll have Kelly Shackelford tomorrow with us. And Kelly talks about listening to that program when he was in Waco in law school. Back then it was KBBW, took the program, which was from 1 to 3, which it still is, and they rebroadcast it at night. He's listening to this and thinking, maybe that's something I could do. So think of all the people that have stood up for religious liberty. And, of course, we've been talking over the last hour here about some of these religious liberty issues. So those are some ways in which you can get involved. But when we come back from the break, Brad, we're going to talk about socialism. We're going to have a chance to hear from Dr. Jay Richards for a couple of minutes. He's done this incredible debate at Notre Dame, and an individual that I've known and actually even did a cruise with him one time, Greg Kokel. Jay Richards and I all did a cruise together with our wives, had a great time. But he brings a lot to the table, not only in terms of academic expertise, but as Penna points out, he's able to communicate it at a very effective level. But before we hear about that issue of socialism, we need to just remind people that we do have now some individuals waiting by the phone to get a phone call. So let's get that.
800-347-5151. That's toll free. 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled right now, up to $7,700. And a great thank you to those donors that made that match possible.
Yes.
Because we could not have done that. This is a real match, and we have real people who gave that money.
One of them just came in yesterday, didn't
That's right.
it?
Yes.
Yeah,
so we're excited for that. Thank you so much for your generosity. But we can't put that money in our total, you guys, until it's matched. Did you know that? We don't get that money until it's matched dollar for dollar. 800-347-5151.
And the website is pointofview.net. I know that as we go to a break, this is a good time for you to give us a call. But if you're not where you can call right now, or you want to maybe just go online, we've made it very easy.
We have.
It only takes a couple of minutes at most to go online, only a couple of minutes to call. But please, give us a call right now. We would like to meet that match, and that's going to happen when you give us a call. 800-347-5151.
In America, the time for sitting on the sidelines is over. We've thought that insanity could only last so long, that our flirtation with ideas that have failed over and over would reach its end. But the longer we wait for common sense to return, the worse things get. Today, we don't even know the difference between men and women. People are seriously proposing a government takeover of just about everything: our cars, our food, our homes and offices. In a nation built on hard work, sacrifice, and self-reliance, a shocking percentage of our neighbors now look to Washington, D.C. to do just about everything. The impulse towards socialism is a clear and present danger to our survival. So what are you going to do about it? I know you can't do it alone, but together, with you as a member of the Point of View Truth Team, we can make an impact. Time is running out on our matching challenge that ends tonight at midnight. Join now online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Join now. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. This is going to be quite a day because we have a lot to cover. In just a few minutes, we're going to be talking with Dr. Jay Richards. He has done this very excellent debate, and I had a chance to watch a great deal of it at Notre Dame, and it was a debate on capitalism versus socialism. So we're going to have a chance to hear from him. Next hour, Jim Denison is going to be with us of the Denison Forum. Penna Dexter in studio with us, and we have a lot to cover. Of course, the theme this week has been socialism, a clear and present danger, and we want to come back and define some of that, although I think Jay Richards is going to do that. But Penna, usually we wait till Friday to talk about religious liberty issues, but today I thought I just might mention one of the articles that we have posted here, and that is an article by David French, who has actually been in studio with us recently. But it's really interesting because for our listeners in Wisconsin, but of course all of our listeners, you had a question raised of Brian Hagedorn, who is running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Because he's a Christian, there were people asking, can a Bible-believing Christian still hold office in the state of Wisconsin? Isn't that amazing?
And a lot of people who you would have thought would have supported him answered that question no. He started a Christian school a while back. He holds to the Orthodox Christian view of sexuality. And, marriage is between a man and a woman, things like that. And because of that, he's been labeled by some of these groups a bigot. And the election was very close. If he'd had the support of some of these groups, they tend to go Republican, he would have won more definitively. It's a very close election. I've heard that perhaps there may even have to be a recount.
Recount, yeah.
But it's just, it was really a religious test that these groups placed upon him, which is unconstitutional to do that, but also just the idea that we're seeing more and more that to operate in various spheres of our economy, you have to sort of throw out your religious views, and if you don't, you're labeled a bigot.
Brad Fisk was with us, and Brad, one of the things I wrote about, and this goes back 5 years, I've been writing these commentaries, these viewpoint commentaries for about almost 12 years now, is I said, are we getting to the point where, a Christian might not be able to be working in photography because of the Christian photographer in New Mexico was fined for declining to photograph a lesbian commitment ceremony? What about a baker? Of course, everybody's heard about Jack Phillips, but of course, Penna, we know, of course, you've had a chance to hear Aaron Melissa Klein in Oregon facing civil and criminal penalties that they did. A florist in Washington who declined to prepare an arrangement for a gay ceremony. But what about hospitality? The Wildflower Inn in Vermont was fined $30,000 and forced to shut down the wedding reception business because they declined to do something. A student dismissed from a counseling program because in this particular case, she had some reservations about the homosexual lifestyle. And even a teacher was kicked out of a doctoral program at Roosevelt University for expressing in class her belief that homosexuals aren't born gay. And this is just another part of this, and I think it underscores why we're coming to people this week. You need to get some perspective. You also need to get some information, and we need to really begin to fight this battle because there's a culture war going on, and sometimes some of the Christians are losing.
I thought I was living in the United States of America. That was my impression as I was a U.S. citizen. I also believe there's this document called the Constitution that is being trampled by this new thought in the last few years that all of a sudden we have to do all these mandated things that do not fit our religious bend, where we are religiously with the Lord. And that's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. And if you could see the hairs on my arm come up when you're reading that list, I'm thinking, that is just wrong. It's just wrong. And so we need to stand up before this stuff becomes nationwide and becomes, for some places, law. We've got to stand up for the truth. And speaking of truth, I have got something exciting to announce. We have a match challenge on the table for our truth team just for today of $7,700. That's $7,700. That money is sitting out there in a place not in our total, because as you give that dollar a day, as you give $100, it becomes $200, and we can move that money, part of that, into our total. But we can't move it until it's matched. So would you consider becoming $1 a day member of the team? That's $30 a month, $360 for the year. That's $720 right now, and we would love to invite you to join. 800-347-5151, and if you join at $1 a day, you're going to receive the Bible Stick, which is the New Testament on an MP3 player. You can hold it in the palm of your hand. If it's not for you, give it as a gift. Because there's someone who will really appreciate having the Word of God, word for word, ESV version, and it's with music and sound effects, 40 voices. It's an awesome gift. It really is, and we'd love to give that to you as a thank you gift. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151, and also online we can give as well.
Yes, pointofview.net. It's very easy to do so. A lot of you think that that's quicker and more efficient, and we would welcome all those online gifts. And I will say, if you want to do more than $30 a month and $1 a day, I mean, that is so helpful to do that, but some folks can do more.
Yep.
And if you give $100 a month, think about that. That's $1,200 a year. That's a big help to Point of View in getting our job done here and what we do. So, and
it gets doubled.
And it gets doubled.
Oh.
And you get not only a Bible stick, which is that MP3 Bible for yourself, you could get 2 sent to members of the military that are deployed right now.
Yep.
So it's kind of multiplying your benefit from that gift. So I would encourage those of you who perhaps are already part of the Truth Team and want to upgrade to $100 a month. We would love it.
Yes. And again, one of the other benefits you get at the $50 level or the $100 level are these booklets. And here's one by Penna Dexter on public education.
Not that.
Here's the one we're talking about in just a minute on capitalism and socialism. And each month, one of those arrives in your box, your mailbox, and it's something to read. And Penna, you said you've really enjoyed using these in a variety of different contexts.
I have them at, I have a couple sets, but I have a set of them in my desk at home. And if I'm on the phone or somebody asks me a question via email or whatever, it's really quick to just pull out one of those booklets, and it's very succinct. And I think we're all about now being able to make our arguments and our points succinctly, and there's nobody better than Kerby Anderson than doing that. So he can help you through these booklets.
So again, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking with Jay Richards. He's first of all going to define socialism, and that was key. I saw in his debate, he just made some points about the fact that some people define it as, well, we just need to have equality. No, that's not socialism. Or we just need to treat people with dignity. No, that's not right. So you're going to hear from him, and since he just came off of doing this very significant debate, I know you're going to appreciate that. So that's why we want you to call now so you don't miss anything. As we go to a break, that number is 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. As Brad just said, your gift of any size will be doubled. So 100 becomes 200. If you give 100 a month, that 1,200 becomes 2,400.
Amazing, yeah.
Amazing.
I love it.
And you can see we've got enough there to really be able to cover that. And again, we have to take care of that. So please give us a call right now, 800-347-5151. We have people ready to take your phone call. Of course, you can also go to the website, pointofview.net. 800-347-5151. Please call right now.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
On my radio program, I'm always looking for ways to help listeners develop discernment. With so many sources of news and information and so many claims being made by pundits and politicians, it's helpful to know how to sort them out. Here are 2 tools for your discernment toolbox. First, be skeptical when someone on the left makes a sweeping claim. Dennis Prager goes even further. He says you should always assume the left is lying to you. He observes that truth is a liberal value and truth is a conservative value, but people on the left say whatever advances their immediate agenda, power is their moral lodestar. Therefore, truth is always subservient to it. He applies this to a number of stories ranging from the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy ideas to the claim that college campuses have a culture of rape to warning that we have 12 years left because of global warming. In each case, he argues that the left lies about the issue. Now, you might find that statement too extreme, which is why I add a second tool of discernment that usually helps confirm the first. Pay less attention to what someone on the left says, pay more attention to what someone on the left does. Let's look at 2 examples Dennis Prager mentions. The left claims that our universities are saturated with a culture of rape, but if they really believe that, they would never send their daughters to college. In their hearts, they really know that this claim is untrue. What about global warming? Do people who warn us about the dangers of climate change act like it is an existential threat? Most people issuing these warnings have a carbon footprint vastly larger than ours. If they really are that concerned, we would expect them to be the first to change their lifestyle. If you want to know what is true, use some of these tools of discernment to check out some of the news and claims being made today. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360, Dr. Sean McDowell.
We clearly live in difficult times, especially for Christians. Sometimes it feels like the culture is just turning against us quickly. We need to speak up with compassion, but we need to speak up with truth in the way that Jesus did. That's one reason why I'm a big fan of Point of View, is they're dealing with cutting-edge, controversial subjects that the church sometimes doesn't want to deal with. But they do their homework, they do it informed, they also do it in a way that's practical so we understand the issues but know what we can do about them. Ministries like Point of View can only survive with the help of listeners. One of the reasons I think Point of View is so valuable is because they just deal with the cutting issues of the day in a manner that's informed, in a manner that's gracious, and in a manner that's making a difference. Point of View is standing up for truth, and they need your help.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
You know, one of the things we are talking about this week is socialism, clear and present danger. Penna, Dexter, you know, we certainly, when we sat down and said this is probably the theme we want to talk about, because we could see whether it's Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, free college tuition, and all the way down to reparations and getting rid of the Electoral College and the filibuster and on and on and on. A lot of that goes back to socialism. So one of the first names I threw out was we've got to have Dr. Jay Richards on. Then when I found out he was going to do a debate at Notre Dame, capitalism versus socialism, I said we definitely need to have him. So this is going to be just a great opportunity to educate our listeners, don't you think?
You know, it's funny how the language has switched, because capitalism in some generations, some of the younger generations, is now a bit of a dirty word, and socialism is becoming a positive word, whereas, you know, up until then, a politician would not want to have a policy that he advocated labeled socialist, and certainly you wouldn't want to say that, you were running as a democratic socialist. But that's all changed now, and I think there's a real opportunity and necessity to educate not only folks who are maybe in the grandparent category, but really people in younger generations who don't even know the havoc it has wreaked throughout history.
Well, if nothing else, this is going to make you want to pick up a phone call and give us a call at 800-347-5151, and you realize what is going on in this particular area. So Dr. Jay Richards, good friend of this ministry, executive editor of The Stream. Of course, he's also assistant research professor at the School of Business and Economics at Catholic University. Of course, we've had him on in the past talking about intelligent design in his book, The Privileged Planet. We've had him on talking about economic policy and issues with his book, Money, Greed, and God. And Dr. Jay Richards, thank you so very much for joining us, and thank you for that debate that you've done. We have a link so that people can watch it if they'd like or see a summary of it. But thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Oh, it's great to be with you. I mean, honestly, I wrote this book, Money, Greed, and God, 10 years ago to try to wake up Christians to these ideas. But at the time, it was not socialism by name. I noticed college kids thinking like socialists, and that distressed me. Here we are 10 years later. And as you just mentioned, we actually have national politicians that are able to run on a socialist label, which is actually historically unprecedented in the United States. If you look at how so-called named socialists have ever done in national elections in the 20th century, and the U.S. is mostly immune to it at that level. Maybe you'd get 1% of the population. But now, all of a sudden, it's the going thing. And according to recent polls, I saw a poll the other day that a bare majority of basically Americans under 35 say they'd like to live under a socialist regime. Yeah, unfortunately, they never define the term.
Well, and that's what we're going to start with, because I found that that's a big issue. Even the letter I sent out last night on appeal said that a very high percentage, almost 3/4 of them, cannot define the term. And I noticed in watching the debate, the first thing you did is define the term, because if you say socialism is equality, well, that's not socialism, or socialism is dignity, or having people have dignity. Socialism is really having the government take over the means of production. But define the terms, because that's the first issue as to why so many young people today don't understand what socialism is, and if they did, they wouldn't like it.
No, that's right. I feel like, okay, what's the most neutral way to go about defining the term? I thought, well, let's look at the dictionary definitions in Merriam-Webster, which codifies, the American English. And so I looked it up. Actually, in the debate, I said, okay, here's the first definition, again, in Webster's dictionary. Any of various economic and political theories advocating collective or governmental ownership and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. And the second definition is a system of society or group living in which there is no private property. 2B is a system in which the means of production are owned and controlled by the state. So basically, if private property, or at least all productive property, is owned and controlled by the state, and all goods and how they're distributed is determined by the state, and there's no private property, then you've got socialism. And if you want to talk about something else, let's talk about that. But that's what the word means. And so what we want to know is, okay, so in the 20th century, people that identified as socialists, who appealed to socialist thinkers, and who more or less did what the dictionary definition is, that should qualify as socialism, and that should be the thing we're talking about.
And when we look at some of those, this is Penna, Dexter, Dr. Richards, it's good to have you on. When we look at some of those examples throughout history, they've all been disasters, and they've resulted in poor economies and people dying. So it is important to point back to history, but we also have a contemporary example right now in Venezuela, and yet folks who advocate these socialist policies say we're not talking about that kind of socialism. Mm-hmm. How can they get away with that?
Well, they get away with it precisely because everybody kind of wants the fuzziness to continue. I mean, the reason socialism polls so well is because people immediately ignore either the definition, and then they ignore all the historical examples. Like if you talk about the Soviet Union or communist China, they'll say, oh, well, that was communism. We're not talking about that. No, actually, those were communist theorists that had advocated those countries, but all the death and destruction were the result of socialism, of the confiscation and collectivization of private property. In fact, according to Marxist theory, socialism is just this temporary stage where the government owns everything, and then eventually the state withers away. and you have this communist utopia. But of course, no one ever gets to that communist utopia. So all that death and destruction under so-called communist experiments of the 20th century were happening at the socialist stage. But as you mentioned, Venezuela is a democratic socialist experiment, because socialists will say, look, we don't want a violent revolution. We just want, people to vote at the ballot box for this. Well,
they
nothing
did
magical about that. Yeah, that's exactly what they did in Venezuela. And the policies are going to do what they're going to do, whether it happens as a result of a revolution or it happens at the ballot box. And so nobody really wants to talk about that, what they really mean. And I've pressed young people on this. Tell me what the mental image of socialism is. And it's sort of three things. It's people working together and sharing and working in common. It's things like farmers markets, local farmers market. I have one 200 yards from me here in D.C. on Saturday. Farthest possible thing you could get from socialism. I mean, it's almost entirely unregulated. And then they have these kind of Scandinavian villages in their minds, a sort of village on a Norwegian fjord where everyone has a Volvo in the garage and enough to eat, and everybody kind of gets together and sings songs on Saturday. I mean, it's literally what people have in mind. And so they're just talking about pleasant social images and then using the word socialism to refer to it, essentially.
Let me just mention that, first of all, we've posted this one article that is from the Stream, which, first of all, is a nice summary of a few things that you've said, including an opportunity for you to watch the debate in its entirety, and that's at pointofview.net. Also, you've given me and Penna an advanced look at an article that's coming out called History's Bloody Mess, Why Marxism and Socialism Always Fail. And when that does get published, we'll publish that as well. But as we're coming to a break, Brad Fisk is with us. Brad, let's just, again, remind people, this is why we're educating individuals, because, again, most people think a farmer's market, a workers' collective is socialism. It's not what you had in Cambodia, in Russia, in China, or even in Venezuela now today.
This topic is a perfect example of why Point of View exists. It's why we do what we do when we get up in the morning every single day right here on the radio. And we're asking you to help us to continue to get up each day and continue to come in and tell you things you're never going to hear anywhere else by joining our support team. Right now, we're inviting you to join the Truth Team at $1 a day is a suggested amount. That's $360 for the year. And oh, by the way, there is a match challenge on the table right now. So every dollar is doubled for the balance of the day. But we need to hear from you now. Won't you join the Truth Team? A gift of any amount is welcome. That's up to you. But join the Truth Team, 800-347-5151. That $1 a day is so doable, you guys. And we're going to give you a gift of the Bible stick. And we're so grateful that we have that New Testament preloaded on a tiny little MP3 player. And we give you the headphones and the battery and the whole deal. So give us a call, and we want to give that as a thank you gift to everybody checking in at $1 a day or more. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
And if you want to give more, like say $100 a month, that might be doable for a lot of you. You not only get the Bible stick, which is the New Testament on an MP3 player, actually the whole Bible, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And you get 2 more to send to members of the military that are deployed. How about that?
In America, the time for sitting on the sidelines is over. We've thought that insanity could only last so long, that our flirtation with ideas that have failed over and over would reach its end. But the longer we wait for common sense to return, the worse things get. Today, we don't even know the difference between men and women. People are seriously proposing a government takeover of just about everything: our cars, our food, our homes and offices. In a nation built on hard work, sacrifice, and self-reliance, a shocking percentage of our neighbors now look to Washington, D.C. to do just about everything. The impulse towards socialism is a clear and present danger to our survival. So what are you going to do about it? I know you can't do it alone, but together, with you as a member of the Point of View Truth Team, we can make an impact. Time is running out on our matching challenge that ends tonight at midnight. Join now online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Join now. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Our theme today is, of course, socialism, a clear and present danger, fourth day of our Truth Team. Let me just mention, for some of you that would like to read some more, we have posted this article, Stream Editor Jay Richards Debates Jacobin Editor on Socialism. If you go to our website, you can actually find a link to the video. I hope that maybe later you'll watch it, 90 minutes. And again, you might also want to click that share button and send it to some young people that need to see the point counterpoint, because it's very well done. But Penna, Dexter with me as well, and I know we have a few more questions for Dr. Jay Richards.
We do, Dr. Richards. You know, we look at socialism and the damage, and I call it an immoralism out there. But there's a debate going on, and has been, within the church about socialism, because people look at the book of Acts, for instance, where the early Christians had things in common, and they'll say, well, the Bible actually promotes socialism. Is that true?
Not at all. I mean, again, you got to go back to that definition. Socialism, by definition, involves the state confiscating. If there's any private property, if the government's going to own everything, that means they have to confiscate it from private hands, and then they control the economy and they abolish private property. There's nothing like that, of course, in the early chapters of Acts. You have, look what had just happened. The thousands of Jews had come from around the Roman world. They had descended upon Jerusalem, this one town, for Pentecost, and then thousands of them had become Christians, and suddenly there's all these new believers. It's a new community, and in that kind of emergency situation where you had thousands of new Christians away from their homes and families and jobs, the Holy Spirit moved the local Christians who had some property to sell their stuff and share it in common. Socialism is not voluntary sharing. Socialism is when the government confiscates people's private property and then redistributes it. And so if the centurions aren't knocking down the door, whatever you want to call what was happening in Acts, it was not socialism. What you do in your family when you share with your children and your spouse, that's not socialism because the government's not involved.
Well, again, if you'd like to join with us, and I hope that you would, because this is what is at stake here in terms of our country, 800-347-5151. Of course, you can also go to the website pointofview.net. That's where you'll find the entire video of the debate, but also some great information. But let me see if, Jay Richards, you can answer another question, and that is a lot of people saying, well, socialism, okay, we know what you're talking about here, but democratic socialism, that's different. I have run into individuals, and every year I go to Vermont, so I'm running into all sorts of people that feel the burn, okay, and they just love Bernie Sanders, and you'll say, well, he's a socialist. And I go, no, he's not. And I said, well, he calls himself that. Oh, well, that's not the same kind of socialism. What about this attempt to say, well, yes, okay, we see what happened in the Soviet Union, we see what happened in China, maybe even in Cuba, but this is democratic socialism. What about that?
Well, it's really a misnomer because the only kind of clear example we have going right now is, as you mentioned earlier, Venezuela, which is actually socialist. They actually nationalized industry. But if you probe people, say the kind of Bernie Sanders supporters, they'll usually invoke Scandinavia, so countries like Norway and Sweden and Denmark, on this assumption that these countries are socialist. Now, there's several things to be said here, but the first thing is that they're not socialist. If you look at, for instance, at Sweden and Denmark, the state does not own large sections of the economy. They did try that. If you had looked at Sweden and you count up everything in 1975, about half of the economy was owned by the Swedish government in 1975. It also had a very moribund economy, high inflation, high cost of living, and so they started dismantling that. If you look at, it's amazing. If you go to these countries, they do tend to do very well. They're also very small countries. They're ethnically homogenous. They have very distinct kind of highly productive cultures. If you look at Danish people that move to the United States, they also do above average. And so there's no reason to assume, first of all, that you can extrapolate from these tiny Nordic countries to a large nation state like the United States. But the key thing is that they're not actually socialists. They do have high income taxes, and they do have kind of large welfare states. On the other hand, they actually, in many cases, have freer economies than we do. If you look at the 2019 ranking in the Index of Economic Freedom, they're all in the mostly free category right alongside the United States. So don't let anybody tell you that, whatever's happening in Scandinavia socialism. It just isn't.
It's generous welfare, and they pay for it because they have a booming business economy, correct?
That's exactly right. Vibrant market economies, most of them effectively don't have minimum wage. It's really easy to start companies and to take them public. There's not a lot of onerous regulation on businesses. In many ways, it's actually a better business environment. And so there's essentially a trade-off. The taxes are higher, but in many ways, actually, the kind of atmosphere for starting and thriving with private businesses is even better than it is here.
And one of the commentaries I wrote a while back is where you have this Swedish historian, Johan Norberg, who's saying, we're not Swedish, number one. And some of you might remember the book Pippi Longstocking. And what was so interesting is the author was just horrified because once Sweden headed down that socialist road, she had to pay a tax on the books of 102%, Penna, if you can imagine that. And so that's why Sweden said, okay, we're not going to engage in that Swedish experiment anymore, right?
No, that's right. And what's funny is, of course, they did it democratically. So there were no violent revolution. I grant you that there's a difference between a violent and bloody revolution that kills millions of people or lots of people and something that happens democratically, as long as it can be reversed. The same thing happened in the United Kingdom. Right after World War II, people voted in a Labour Party that started nationalizing industries. In other words, the government started taking control of private industry. It didn't work out. By the 1970s, the economy was a disaster. They voted in Margaret Thatcher, and she started actually selling off these nationalized industry. So in that case, at least these democratic socialist experiments were reversible because these were in sort of low corruption countries. Now, places like Venezuela, unfortunately, which is, although it was a vibrant economy, has always kind of been racked with corruption. Once the socialists in that country, unfortunately, as we can see, took power, they absolutely had no intention of giving it up.
Well, and again, that's a flawed view of human nature, which I want to come back to in just a minute. But, Brad, one of the things that I think people that are listening to this right now saying, I want my kids to hear this. I want my grandkids to hear this.
I was on the same thought.
I want my neighbors to hear this,
Yes.
And again, this is why we do what we do.
Yep.
You have, of course, the material that we have today. Of course, you have these little booklets. Here's mine on capitalism and socialism. Yep. And, of course, you have even my book on Christians and economics, which is both in English and Spanish, because we recognize we have to educate a whole new generation. And when you support Point of View, you're helping us educate this next generation.
So those of you who are mothers, those of you with children or with grandchildren, pay close attention for just a moment. Won't you please invest those dollars in kingdom business with a capital K? We are talking about a fight for truth, that biblical truth. There's a big difference between what people define truth as in all kinds of contexts, and for us here at Point of View, where we define truth based on biblical truth. And you can be a part of what we're doing here every day and do something tangible. Give us a call with your very best gift. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. So we can continue to have people like Jay Richards on. I mean, it's just fascinating what you're talking about.
It is fascinating. Jay, when I think about the dangers of this taking hold here in the United States, it's more by degree. And as you said, it would be voted on in Congress. Some of these policies, like the Green New Deal, for instance, somebody would have to pass this. But once it happened, it would be extremely coercive and when it becomes that and you start destroying lives, it would destroy lives and livelihoods and private property and a lot of things. So that's when the coercive element of it comes in, doesn't it?
It is. And I mean, I honestly think that what's more likely to happen in the United States is not that we vote for nationalizing industries. That's never really worked very well, but what you might just call a kind of regulatory socialism. So you can have a system where the government literally owns companies, private companies, or you could have a system in which it so dictates the terms. So every decision it has to make in terms of hiring and the prices it's going to charge, how much it's going to pay. At some point, the government could so regulate private industry that it effectively owns it. And once you get that kind of massive regulatory state in place, it's very, very hard to unwind it because, of course, our massive bureaucracies are essentially apolitical. We don't vote for these bureaucracies. We vote for politicians who pass bills, and then all these regulatory rules are written. And once they're on the books, it's very difficult ever to get rid of them. That's the thing I worry about, this kind of creeping regulatory socialism.
Let's take a break, and we'll see if we can keep Jay Richards over just a little bit longer. But if nothing else, it's back to what we talked about the other day with Robert Knight. You know, millennials don't like people to tell them what to do. Well, all of a sudden you'd have bureaucrats telling them what to do on every single economic transaction. This is a disaster. We are taking a break, and this is a great time for you to call. We do need to hear from you right now. That number is 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. If you agree with Brad and me that this is the kind of information you want to pass on to your kids, your grandkids, your neighbors, aunts, uncles, others, help us out. 1-800-347-5151, pointofview.net.
Every dollar is doubled right now in the middle of a match challenge, so please give us a call right now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Going through the stations and caught Kerby and a very interesting topic. So just listening to it, and so just by hearing the topic, I can relate to some of those topics. But it has impacted my life a lot. I enjoy listening to the station.
And I've been listening to Point of View for about 12 years now. It's just been such an impact on me because in high school, when I first became aware of the political spectrum and all that, and then the culture wars going on, I was a conservative ideologue, basically, going with whatever conservatives said. But after listening to the show over the years, I realized that I'm supposed to be for truth. I'm supposed to be a Christian and then a conservative. And I'm supposed to look at all this that's going on around us in today's culture through a biblical lens. And I can't thank y'all enough for that.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Back once again, and we kept Dr. Jay Richards over for just another couple minutes here. Penna Dexter with me, of course, Brad Fisk. And Jay, you know, we were just even, as we were going to the break, talking about how we want to get this information out to others. And that's why you wrote the book, Money, Greed, and God. That's why we're going to post as soon as we can when your article is published, History's Bloody Mess, Why Marxism and Socialism Always Fail, and even have posted this one from the stream. And, of course, we've published a number of other articles. But could you, for just a minute, maybe speak to our donors, our listeners, and encourage them to be donors and to support this ministry? What would you say to them?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is that all these ideas need to be translated. That's the funny thing about this topic we're focusing on right now, is that the arguments and the evidence are out there, but they don't filter their way down. They don't filter their way down to ordinary Americans, and then from them down to the younger generation. I mean, in an ideal world, we would not have to keep making these arguments against socialism. The verdict of the 20th century was quite loud and conclusive. It's a terrible idea. We should never try it. Nevertheless, people, new generations grow up. 18-year-olds have no memory of the Cold War, and they need to hear this stuff, and they need to understand this stuff, and we need to reach people where they are. And very often, it's not long printed books, even though I publish those. It's more articles and online articles and radio and social media. That's where this the information tends to work itself out. And so it's absolutely essential. If people are thinking about donating to the ministry and are exercised about this issue, this is a really leveraged way to do that.
Jay, when you look at Marxism being celebrated recently, you look at what happens on our college campuses where you don't get a critique of socialism for the most part, and you don't get a lot of kudos for capitalism on most campuses in most classes. So in a sense, our young people, their only chance is things that you write, things that people begin to intentionally put out there. And programs like Point of View, it's really their only chance to get the truth, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think that if you're thinking about high schoolers and junior high kids, you need to think about what you need to do to inoculate them against bad ideas. I mean, we inoculate kids against diseases, and when we do that, we expose them to either a dead version of a pathogen or a weakened version so that their immune system can build up an immunity, and then they're protected from the full-blown disease. You don't quarantine them in the sense that you're going to have your kids not know anything about these things. But the other danger is that we overexpose them. We send them off to college completely unprepared and uninoculated. They end up catching intellectual viruses almost immediately. I guarantee you, even if you're planning to send your kids to a Christian colleges are not immune to this stuff. I mean, in fact, that's why I got into this. It's not because of what they were saying at the University of Texas, the University of Washington. It was what they were saying at fairly conservative Christian schools in the theology classroom. You got to do what you can ahead of time to inoculate kids. And this is one of the really bad ideas, bad economic ideas, especially socialism. It's going to be one of the pervasive ideas, I promise you, that kids are going to have to deal with no matter where they go to college.
So again, I would encourage our listeners to get the information we have here. Of course, we have these little booklets. This one's on capitalism and socialism. Might talk about sending your kids to the Pro Mind Games Conference, Summit Ministries, some of those kinds of ways, and doing what you can to educate them. And if nothing else, I want to, first of all, Jay, I know you're going on to another interview. Thank you for, first of all, joining with us. We've certainly teamed up with you over the years, but thank you for being willing to go onto a college campus and do a debate. Yes. I've done a few of those debates over the years, and I know that they aren't the most enjoyable thing, but thank you for going to Notre Dame and doing the debate, and we are going to encourage people to watch that debate because I think you just did an outstanding job, as we would have expected.
Thanks so much. Good to be with both of you.
We have just a few minutes left before the top of the hour, and we have a match on the table. Now, we've whittled some of it down, but we still have some significant financial needs.
Let me explain how this match works. I'm going to be real quick about it. Elizabeth gave $100. It becomes $200. A friend of the ministry said, love you guys. Here's a $600 check. It becomes $1,200. Somebody joined at $1 a day, became part of the Truth Team, and that $30 a month now becomes $60 a month. You see how the multiplication happens. We're down to about 5,000 of the remaining 7,700 in the match to go. So good progress has been made, but we're not done. We have over $5,000 still to be matched. Every gift you give is doubled. doubled. That's the way it works. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
You know, and you've probably heard people when they've done fundraising saying all the money we need is out there. The problem is it's still in your pockets. And of course we said that. But there was something else that Jay was talking about. All the good information's out there, but it's locked away.
That's
and
right.
so Point of View is a way to unlock that and to put it in these little booklets. Here's the one by Penna Dexter on public education. Here's the most recent one on campus unrest. These are issues people are asking questions about, and so we make that available. So again, we're trying to unlock that information. Your responsibility is to unlock those dollars that are maybe in your wallet, your pocketbook, in your credit card. And if you want to help us, and I hope that you do, because we certainly have a match on the table, that number is 800-347-5151.
Again, 800.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I just want to commend you guys on your program. I love listening to you.
I want to say, first of all, that I really enjoyed the Millennial Roundtable, and I love the program altogether. I think Kerby is great, and I really appreciate all of y'all, all that y'all do, and the truth that y'all put out.
I think you guys and gals are more right on about the assessment of this country right now than anything I've heard. You know, I go home and I tell my wife, you've got to hear what they're talking about on the show.
Point of View is actually a lifeline for me, and I'm actually a third-generation Point of View listener. I homeschool my girls, and I don't think I could do what I do without Point of View on a daily basis. Without ministries like Point of View, we really don't have much hope for the future of our children, our grandchildren. They just really help on a daily basis protect the freedoms that we enjoy today. I can't see a better way to invest in our future than to support Point of View.
Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it. Not only that, I want to encourage everybody listening to donate, because without our donations, I know that y'all won't be able to stay on the air, and it's just, I don't know where we get this kind of information if it wasn't from y'all.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I love the line. I don't know where I get this information. Why for you? And part of that comes from having people like Jay Richards and others. Matter of fact, a little bit later, we're going to have a piece that we play by Wayne Grudem. And these are individuals that have been able to take this information, Penna, and test it out in the classroom. So that is really important to do. But we're coming to a break. So, Brad, I really want to get some more comments around the table, but I also want individuals to recognize that as we go to the break, now's the perfect time to call.
It is. 800-347-5151. There may be somebody with $5,000 that could give. A gift of any amount, $100, $1,000, maybe $10 a month, whatever the Lord leads you to do, would you give us a call right now? 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
Please call because, again, we're going to have Jim Denison on a little bit later, and you do not want to miss that. So call now, 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
In America, the time for sitting on the sidelines is over. We've thought that insanity could only last so long, that our flirtation with ideas that have failed over and over would reach its end. But the longer we wait for common sense to return, the worse things get. Today, we don't even know the difference between men and women. People are seriously proposing a government takeover of just about everything: our cars, our food, our homes and offices. In a nation built on hard work, sacrifice, and self-reliance, a shocking percentage of our neighbors now look to Washington, D.C. to do just about everything. The impulse towards socialism is a clear and present danger to our survival. So what are you going to do about it? I know you can't do it alone, but together, with you as a member of the Point of View Truth Team, we can make an impact. Time is running out on our matching challenge that ends tonight at midnight. Join now online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Join now. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me in studio with me today, Penna, Dexter, Brad Fisk. And again, we are on the fourth day of our Truth Team. And in just a few minutes, we're going to hear from our friend Jim Denison of the Denison Forum. And he is an individual that I read on a regular basis. Matter of fact,
Me too.
Nick Pitts, by the way, used to work with him. So again, you can see the legacy already of Jim Denison. And we want to spend some time with him. And in just a minute, I also want to play a little piece that is also on our website. It's a video called The Korean Lights. We'll explain more about that in just a minute, but it really makes the case for why socialism doesn't work, Penna, Dexter. So we'll get into that. But I think, Brad, you maybe have a few thank yous, don't you?
Yeah, I got a few thank yous for our Truth Team Week. We've got a $50 single gift that becomes $100 from Peoria, and a friend checking in with a single gift of $200, which becomes $400, and a monthly gift of $50, which becomes $100 a month. How do you like that?
Oh, I love
those.
that.
It's creative, but a $300 single gift becomes $600. We actually had a $7,700 match given to us from some donors, and they said you can have it if and only if you match that dollar for dollar. We'll be able to move that into the total, and so we got about $5,000 to go. You guys really want to get that cleared up by the end of the hour, if at all possible. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
The pressure is on, because anytime you have a matching gift, you don't want to leave money on the table. No. And I can't stand to leave money on the table. So, ladies and gentlemen, please step up. And as a matter of fact, we have one more hour of Point of View today. And as Brad said, and he's right, we cannot end the show without meeting that match. We've really got to move forward on this. So I ask that, do the best you can, whether it's a one-time gift, but really what we love is this monthly support. We love having you with us on the team, and we know that, with every gift, there's usually a prayer. And so we really appreciate those kinds of commitments, and we're asking for you to join us.
You might say, what am I supporting? Well, obviously supporting the radio program, and you have a chance to hear that 2 hours a day or sometimes 3 hours a day, depending on where you are, because we do broadcast 3 full hours as well. There are all sorts of articles. There's the booklets and all the rest. But one other thing that we have done from time to time are what we call uncensored videos. And one of those videos was something we created when we had Wayne Grudem on the program, and then put a video to some of the audio. So you're going to have a chance to hear the audio, but if you'd like to watch the video, it's available at the website pointofview.net. And it's something, again, that you might want to send on to someone else, because he does a very good job of doing a comparison between what a socialist, communist North Korea looks like and what a capitalist, free market South Korea looks like. Here's Wayne Grudem.
People say, well, the kind of government we have doesn't make much difference. The church will go on no matter what. But I just don't think people are aware of how the kind of government people have is so influential in history. You can see from the air that South Korea is just awash with electric lights, because their cities are awake and people are active and families are enjoying one another and businesses are still working. There's a huge amount of activity. Cars are driving throughout the streets. So from the air, you see all this light in South Korea, but North Korea is absolutely dark because the people are so poor that they don't have electricity to light their homes or to read by or whatever they want to do. The only difference between North and South Korea is the kind of government they have, because they're both countries have the same cultural background and heritage. Before 1947, they were both Korean. Together, they were all Korea. And then the North became communist and the South became free and democratic. The South has progressed from being one of the poorest countries in the world in the 1950s to the 12th richest country in the world today, South Korea. But North Korea is the poorest country in the world. And there's more to it than that. I think that aerial view is also sort of a spiritual metaphor, because the church in South Korea has experienced great revival. And it's printing Christian literature, it's sending missionaries throughout the world, it's having Christians have influence on government. But in the North, it's spiritually dark. There are hardly any Christians at all. They meet in secret, they can't meet publicly, they can't do evangelism, they can't send out literature, they can't send out missionaries. There's a huge difference between those nations, and the only thing that really is responsible for those differences is an oppressive government versus a free government.
And again, Penna, Dexter, one of the other things we talk about is you have done interviews, and I have as well, with Open Doors, the number one country in the world that more persecutes Christians than any other, North Korea. And I think what you can see here is that some people don't realize that when you allow the government to control the economic issues, of course, we've also talked about how government can control your medical issues, then it can also control everything else. And so once you head down this road towards socialism, you also head down a road that limits religious expression and religious freedom. So those two oftentimes go hand in hand, don't they?
We talked in our first hour about a law in Texas to prevent businesses from being penalized, or people that got licensed to do different kinds of work in the state of Texas. There's a law now that's going through the legislature. It's passed the Senate, that says you can't be penalized for your religious beliefs and adhering to those by having a license revoked for your career. We also have laws now forcing businesses in various localities and states across the nation. They're called SOGI laws, sexual orientation, gender identity laws, which force businesses to comply with the homosexual agenda, and to the detriment often of their own religious beliefs. So these are ways in which governments can come down on you, and when they're powerful, and they can do so. Wayne Grudem said something in passing practically about Christian influence on government and how they don't have it in communist and socialist countries, but they do have it here. We do have it. We still have it. But we need to teach people how to wield it. And that's one of the things we've always done here on Point of View. And it becomes extremely important now as the threat of socialism coming through our legislatures, even not, voted in, but through legislative bills and laws becomes more common. We need to learn how to influence our government. And we do that here at Point of View. And we ask for your help.
There's an urgent need. I mean, we really are in kind of an emergency, you might say, in getting the message out. There's very few voices that are directly talking about this stuff. And that's why we're asking you to give. Do it like this person gave through the web. It's a $50 a month gift. It's the part of the Liberty Club, we call it, online. And we're so grateful for everybody who calls and gives. But you know what? We're not done yet. We've still got a bunch of that Match Challenge money going. And we have a telephone number that they can call. And you're going to help us with that.
It's 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Or you can go to pointofview.net.
And again, we just do need to hear from you. Right now, we have a number of individuals that are sitting by the phones waiting for them to ring.
They are.
And they ring when you call. So we need you to call. And this is a good time to make that phone call. I know that one of the problems we always have is when you have interesting guests like Jay Richards or in just a few minutes, Jim Denison, nobody wants to call because they don't want to miss all the great content. Right. And we certainly want to continue to provide that, but we also need to hear from you.
Something I want to make clear. We are not in despair. We are not in the doldrums and just woe is me. That's not where we're at here at Point of View. Why? Because we have a God who we know, and we adopt the biblical viewpoint on everything we do. And you can help us continue that at 800-347-5151. Come on, you guys. 800-347-51. Every dollar doubled.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
On my radio program, I'm always looking for ways to help listeners develop discernment. With so many sources of news and information and so many claims being made by pundits and politicians, it's helpful to know how to sort them out. Here are 2 tools for your discernment toolbox. First, be skeptical when someone on the left makes a sweeping claim. Dennis Prager goes even further. He says you should always assume the left is lying to you. He observes that truth is a liberal value and truth is a conservative value, but people on the left say whatever advances their immediate agenda, power is their moral lodestar. Therefore, truth is always subservient to it. He applies this to a number of stories ranging from the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy ideas to the claim that college campuses have a culture of rape to warning that we have 12 years left because of global warming. In each case, he argues that the left lies about the issue. Now, you might find that statement too extreme, which is why I add a second tool of discernment that usually helps confirm the first. Pay less attention to what someone on the left says, pay more attention to what someone on the left does. Let's look at 2 examples Dennis Prager mentions. The left claims that our universities are saturated with a culture of rape, but if they really believe that, they would never send their daughters to college. In their hearts, they really know that this claim is untrue. What about global warming? Do people who warn us about the dangers of climate change act like it is an existential threat? Most people issuing these warnings have a carbon footprint vastly larger than ours. If they really are that concerned, we would expect them to be the first to change their lifestyle. If you want to know what is true, use some of these tools of discernment to check out some of the news and claims being made today. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hello, I'm O.S. Hawkins, and what a privilege it is to say these few brief words about how much I love Kerby Anderson and how much I respect the ministry of Point of View. You know, in a world we're living in, when their culture is collapsing and crumbling all around us, we see some folks rushing out to condemn the culture. But what I love about Point of View is it confronts our culture every day as Kerby speaks the truth and speaks it in love. So I want to encourage you to support Point of View and thanking God for the gift He's given all of us in Kerby Anderson, who leads with integrity and excellence.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Nice comments from O.S. Hawkins, and we're going to be talking with Dr. Jim Denison in just a minute. Penna Dexter in studio, as well as Brad Fisk. And don't forget, we have a match on the table. It's less than $5,000
It
now.
is a little under $5,000 to go on a match challenge, and that means every dollar you give right now up to that amount is doubled. Did you hear me say doubled?
Doubled.
Dollar 100 becomes 200, 1,000 becomes 2,000. It's that simple. Every monthly gift we count for the whole year, so you could become a Truth Team member at $30 a month, and it becomes $360 for the year. $720 is what it becomes. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We are so excited when you call and give.
Well, again, we talk about culture, Penna. You know so much about these cultural issues, and Jim Denison is one of our favorites, right? Because he just brings so much to the table.
He's our next guest.
He is our next guest. CEO of the Denison Forum. We have from time to time post his daily articles. Just the other day, I read his piece where he was talking about an individual who wrote into the Washington Post, Jared Bilski, on why he lost his faith in faith. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But again, Jim Denison holds not only a Master's of Divinity, but a PhD from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And apparently he also travels on the plane because you sat next to him one time.
We sat next to each other, and we got to know each other. We did not know each other, and I've enjoyed reading his daily commentary.
Yeah, the daily article. Jim Denison, always great to have you on the program with us.
So glad to be with you today, Kerby. God bless you. How are you?
I am doing well, and we are excited about our Truth Team Week. And one of the articles we wanted to talk about is one that you wrote about on Unplanned, a movie about abortion that changes everything. Penna, I know you've seen it. I know he's seen it. But the point that you are making is that this is a divisive topic, but it's one that's really important. And there were so many attempts to try to shut this down, not the least of which is the MMPA gave it an R rating. You had Planned Parenthood speaking out against it. You had all sorts of individuals doing what they can to actually create a problem by not allowing them to advertise. And all of a sudden, the Twitter account broke down. I'm sure it was just coincidence, but nevertheless, it exceeded expectations, didn't it?
It did on every level. One of the things that was fascinating to me, Kerby, I got to go to one of the early screenings for it, advanced screenings, and the actress that plays Abby Johnson was there. She told us about all of the threats that were brought against her in the movie industry if she played this role, how she would never work again, she would never get another opportunity, that she was basically committing career suicide by taking on this role. And she prayed through it and felt that the Lord was absolutely calling her into this role, and that's why she had the courage even to star in this movie that is so powerful, so emotional, and so significant.
I will say, Jim, she does a good job, and I saw an early screening too. So as I watched all this publicity for the movie play out, I wondered, when they talked about it getting an R rating, for instance, and that was because of graphic and blood and things like that in it. I wondered if it was going to help the movie, and I think it did.
I think it did as well. The one scene, as you know, that perhaps generated that R rating is a critical scene in the movie. That's a scene in which, not to give away too much of the movie, but there's a young lady that has had an abortion. She's bleeding out. She's out in the waiting room now, and the central figure of the movie, who's at that point directing the Planned Parenthood clinic, sees her and has to rush her back in. They have to call the doctor back in to save her life. And that's the first time that she has participated in an abortion as a provider personally. And that's what starts the process of her changing her whole view on abortion and moving in the direction that the movie and her life take her. It's a remarkable scene. It's a critical scene because for the first time, as I tried to say in my article, it really makes abortion real. So few of us in America have actually participated in or seen an abortion personally. The vast majority of people that support the abortion position or the pro-choice position have never actually seen what they're talking about. They've not actually seen what they're supporting. And this movie gives America an opportunity to see what they're actually supporting and just how heinous and painful and dangerous it is.
And Jim, one of the things that I thought we might talk about for just a minute is that, as you say, no one will ever argue an abortion case before the Supreme Court, but we all have an opportunity to maybe talk with our state legislators or talk with individuals in our family. And you talk about some priorities about being persistent, being godly, and being prayerful. And this is one of the questions that we ask so often here at Point of View. What can I do about it? What would you say?
Yeah, thank you. The first thing, obviously, and we all know this, but we just need to be reminded of it, is to be praying, I think, every day. This is the Holocaust of America. If we knew that there was a Holocaust going on in Germany relative to the Jews of World War II, of course, this would be something we'd be thinking about, praying toward, grieved about, be trying to speak into and move into on a daily basis. And so that's the first thing that we want to be doing. Second, we want to be doing what we can personally to help those that are at risk. One of the most significant reasons that women tell us that they choose abortion has to do with financial issues, has to do with life stage issues, has to do with just not being aware of how they could raise a child. We want to be there for them. We want to be just not pro-birth, but pro-life. We want to be people that give them an opportunity to know that they're loved and that they can be supported. We want to be pushing for adoption. as a viable alternative to abortion and making people aware that there's so many ways that they can do that. And then we want to be persistent, as I tried to say. I know this can be an issue that we'd rather not think about. It's something that's been going on, obviously, since 1973 on a legalized level. But this is, I believe, that one of the most critical issues in our culture. If we're looking at America the way God does, how could we not see this as an issue of such significance it should be on our hearts every day?
You know, I was glad to see the popularity of the movie in the opening weekend, Jim. And I think a couple of things about this movie is that we don't always tell the truth about abortion. Even those of us in the pro-life movement, we neglect some of the truth. And I think one of the pieces of truth that we neglect is these medical abortions that are done with a drug. And they're given a drug to take home, and then they take another pill. And how hard, that's not an easy abortion. That's very difficult. And that movie tells us about that. Also, what Planned Parenthood really is, what their mindset is exposed in this movie in a way that I've never seen before. And also what the Christian protesters, who are they and how do they act? They're so peaceful and loving, and a lot of people don't see that. So those three things are exposed in the movie, I think, in a way that the American public doesn't understand. What do you think?
Couldn't agree more. I love that couple that really are the heroes of the movie, as much as the central figure is, who love her, who reach out to her, who speak to her through the fence, who give her an option so that when she knows she wants to make a change, she knows where she can go. They weren't pushing her, they weren't forcing her, but they were available to her. And that, as you know, made the change. So we want to be those people that are available to someone, whether they're in the abortion provider industry or whether they're somebody that's considering or someone that's had an abortion. We want to be that father waiting for the prodigal son, that the moment the son chooses to come home, the father rushes to greet him and to welcome him and to bring him home. And we want to be those folks. And they were, I thought, portrayed so effectively in the movie. I agree with you completely. It's an inside picture of what really Planned Parenthood is. To the abortion industry that it is, to the financial margins that are inside it, to the degree to which they drive abortions, for the bottom line that's inside what they're doing, the degree to which they reimburse their providers, and they push a financial model. It was interesting, isn't it, that Planned Parenthood went to court to try to prevent this person from telling her story and going forward, and they were summarily dismissed.
Wow.
I mean, it was as easy a court ruling as perhaps you could imagine. Then they tried again when the movie came out. They tried again when the book came out. And they have summarily been defeated at every point because the movie tells the truth. And truth is the best defense.
We need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to hear a little bit more about some other issues that you have written about. And again, we have a link to this daily article, but we have a match on the table, and we need to take that seriously and clean it up.
That's right. By the top of the hour, we'd love to have that $5,000 in the house, as they say, and it happens one phone call at a time. 800-347-5151. Won't you become a Truth Team member? $1 a day. That is so doable, don't you think, Penna? $1 a day, $30 a month.
Absolutely, and it's easy for you to be part of the team. It just takes a phone call, 800-347-5151, or just going to our website, pointofview.net.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to hear from Jim Denison a little bit more. Maybe he can also give you a challenge on why you should support this ministry. I know he'll be glad to do that. Also want to talk about this whole idea of apologetics and how people lose their faith. So we'll get into that as well. 1-800-347-5151. Please call right now.
In America, the time for sitting on the sidelines is over. We've thought that insanity could only last so long, that our flirtation with ideas that have failed over and over would reach its end. But the longer we wait for common sense to return, the worse things get. Today, we don't even know the difference between men and women. People are seriously proposing a government takeover of just about everything: our cars, our food, our homes and offices. In a nation built on hard work, sacrifice, and self-reliance, a shocking percentage of our neighbors now look to Washington, D.C. to do just about everything. The impulse towards socialism is a clear and present danger to our survival. So what are you going to do about it? I know you can't do it alone, but together, with you as a member of the Point of View Truth Team, we can make an impact. Time is running out on our matching challenge that ends tonight at midnight. Join now online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Join now. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, and we certainly do need to hear from you. We have a match on the table, and Penna Dexter in studio with me, along with Brad Fisk, and of course we're talking with Dr. Jim Denison. What's the update at the moment?
Update on the match challenge. We started at $7,700 a little over an hour ago, and we're down to $3,200 left to go, but we don't want to wait. We need to get this cleared up at the top of the hour, please, if you would. $3,200 to go. Every dollar you give up to that amount is doubled dollar for dollar. 800-347-5151.
Jim Denison, you know that we're in the midst of our Truth Team Week, and you've been involved with us in the past. What would you say to our listeners about why they would want to support Point of View?
Yeah, thank you, Kerby, for the privilege to speak to that. I want to say two things. First of all, I do not know of any ministry, any place, that is speaking biblical truth in love more effectively and more cohesively than Kerby is and Point of View. If you're looking to support somebody who is defending biblical truth, who's speaking biblical truth into the issues of the day, but doing so in the spirit of Christ, and the character of Christ with the compassion of Christ, this is the kind of ministry, exactly the ministry you ought to be supporting. The second thing I would say to them is, as we support your ministry, you're giving us an opportunity to extend our ministries. We're being equipped to use our influence. We're being equipped to use our relationships and use the places where we can make a difference in the culture. So we're not only helping you make a difference in the culture, you're helping us make a difference in the culture. I don't know a ministry that can say that on the kind of radio context that you guys provide. So I'm absolutely 100% a fan, and I would encourage anybody listening to us today to be supportive.
You know, Jim, I was thinking about how truth is communicated from generation to generation. And we spent the first part of the show talking about socialism because we think it's a huge threat in so many ways to our country. And just during the break, we were talking about how parents don't know really how to communicate the ideas of socialism and capitalism to their kids. I know growing up, my dad just did a great job of that. He explained what communism was. He explained what was happening in the Soviet Union and how our country was different. And so that's one thing. I mean, we want to reach young people, but we also need to reach their parents so they can catechize their kids in, all of the issues that are important to Christians. And so speak to that, because I know you're about that too.
Absolutely. I'm convinced that that's critical to the next generation. I get to go to Israel a lot. I'll be there 5 times this year. And one of the things that so impresses me every time I go, I've been 30 times over the years or so, is the degree to which the Jewish culture has done what you just said. From the time a child is born, the parents take it upon them as their first responsibility to teach that child in the traditions of Judaism and the tenets of their faith, to bring them up in such a way that they will continue in the traditions and the culture and the heritage, the faith commitments that they themselves have received. And that's why such a small percentage of American or a human population continues to be such a strong and vibrant culture, is because they take so seriously the commands of Deuteronomy 6 to impress these commands on your children. You and I have that exact same responsibility, not only relative to biblical truth, but I believe relative to traditional American values as well. That's why I think it's so important that our children understand the uniqueness of America, the exceptionalism of America, that they understand what makes America and America historically great, and they understand those things that are vital to our future. And so could not agree more. And the degree to which we can equip the next generation by empowering parents is absolutely vital to the future of our nation and to the continued continuity of our culture.
Again, if you want to join with us, and I hope that you do, especially in light of all the things we've talked about today with Jay Richards and now with Jim Denison, please give us a call, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And Jim, one of the things I appreciate about your daily article, as evidenced by the fact that just 2 days ago I read from it, almost verbatim, was something that caught your eye in the Washington Post, and that is you had the author Jared Bilski, a writer, comedian based in Pennsylvania, but he basically said, I lost my faith in my faith. And then he gives reasons why. Too many unanswered questions, too many problematic absolutes, too much fear-mongering, too much hypocrisy, whatever it might be. And what I appreciated about this is that you then help us understand how to answer those kinds of objections that we get from others. And you know as well as I do, Jim, that not only are we trying to help individuals listening to this program know how to articulate a biblical worldview, but also how to defend a biblical worldview. And so in your article, you talk about how to respond to people that say, well, they're unanswered questions, or there's hypocrisy in the church, or restrictions on on whom you're supposed to love. And I think that's one of the things that you and I have as a real desire to not only help people understand how to think biblically, but know how to defend the biblical faith.
That's, as you know, Kerby, one of the most significant biblical commands for our culture today. Peter, writing to his followers, makes it clear to them that they're to be ready to defend their faith, to be able to give a reason for the hope that's in them, to do it with gentleness and respect, to do it in a kind and gracious way, but nonetheless, to be able to explain not only what we believe, but why we believe it. I believe that you and I are living in a time that is more secular, that is more post-Christian, perhaps more anti-Christian than certainly at any point in our lifetime. You might even be able to make a case we've never even been at this place historically as a nation in terms of cultural adaptations of positions that are so unbiblical, whether that's a pro-choice position or same-sex marriage or euthanasia or whatever the issue is. We just as a country are adopting more unbiblical morality than ever before. And so if I'm wanting to speak to somebody about that, it's not enough that I explain what the Bible says. I need to be able to explain why the Bible's right. And to the degree that I can use almost secular reasoning to speak to a secular person about spiritual truth, I think that's important today. And that's one of the many things you and I try to do together.
Well, and I love what you say there is, here's an individual who says, well, I can't answer these questions. Well, that doesn't mean the answers don't exist. We talk about those. And I love you say, I hope he doesn't apply this to his family's health, care about medical options he doesn't understand personally. Or what about hypocrisy in the church? Of course, we've heard this for generations. But, individuals that say, well, I don't like hypocrites in the church. I won't go to church. Well, they're hypocrites in the medical profession, but I bet you go to doctors. They're hypocrites in education, but I bet you still have teachers. And you just have some just real good common sense kinds of arguments. So one of the things that I know you want to do at the Denison Forum, one of the things I want to co-labor with you at the Denison Forum to do, and certainly one of the things we do here at Point of View, is to just help people understand how to make the case for Christianity. And it's always been important to do so, but especially in this growing secular culture, we need to just find those common sense arguments. So we appreciate the fact that you're willing to co-labor with us. And one more time, just before we let you go, what would you say to listeners right now that wonder, why should I grab that phone and pick it up and call one of those individuals that are waiting to take your phone call right now?
I would say the time's never been more urgent. I know that may sound like rhetoric, may sound like it's something that I'm just doing to try to persuade folk to be helpful, but I genuinely believe that you and I are living in such a time that speaking biblical truth in love has never been as urgent, as vital, as significant as it is right now. I think we're seeing a pushback against evangelical belief, evangelical morality on a level certainly unprecedented in my lifetime. I think that's going to continue. I think with the electoral cycle ahead of us, with some of the issues that are going to be discussed in the media, it's going to become increasingly challenging for us to defend biblical truth in a Christian way. And that's why your ministry is so vital. That's why supporting your ministry right now is so vital. Because we have to be light, we have to be salt in a world that is desperate for both.
I might just again mention that we have a link to denisonforum.org. The one today, Why Avengers Endgame Broke the Internet, and that's kind of fun. You can read that one. And, of course, we also have some of the other articles we've mentioned here. And, Jim Denison, we just always appreciate co-laboring with you, and thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Kerby, what a privilege to be with you and the others. I'm grateful for you, praying for you, and so honored to stand with you today.
We are just about ready to go to a break, and this is a perfect time for individuals to call right now. Again, pick up that phone. It's not that hard, really. 800-347-5151. Or as Nick Pitts did the other day, say, well, when we're mentioning those numbers, you millennials, you probably don't even know that the phone can be used for a phone call. So you can use your phone instead to go to pointofview.net. So whether you want to call and talk to someone right now, we have a number of people looking through the glass at us going, we're waiting for the phone call, and they're waiting for that, and they're smiling. But if you would like to talk to one of those individuals, they would be glad to take your phone call. It only takes a short period of time, 800-347-5151, or you can go to the website, pointofview.net. And Penna, we say that you don't have to have all the money right now. I have a lot of people say, I could not write you a check for $360. But I could probably come up with $1 a day, $30 a month, and put it on my credit card, or even have it come out automatically from my bank account or something like that. So that's what we're really looking for, people to make a pledge and to help us out.
Yes, they're part of the team, and they deal with helping us, supporting us every month. So $1 a day, $30 a month to be part of the Truth Team is what we ask as a minimum, but also we have a Century Club. If you can do more, if you could do $100 a month, that would be $1,200 a year. And right now, $2,400
right.
with our match that doubles it. And, a lot of folks can do that. And that would be, I think, a great investment of your energy and your treasure, because it's really a world-changing ministry. Right now, we are at sort of a crucial point in our nation. We need to pass along certain biblical values, and I loved how Jim Denison said why the Bible is right about these things. That's what we're about here at Point of View.
1-800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
I think that Point of View has done a tremendous job in helping send information that is crucial for parents and for people that are, just going about their work every day and not really understanding the culture war that we are in. And without that information, moms and pops all across this nation would not know what's going on. They are not going to hear it from the regular media.
Clearly, I think that we are operating in a culture that is at every turn seeing the media and Hollywood push an agenda on them, and you folks present the truth. And not only do you present the truth, you present it in a gracious way that helps people to understand the facts.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Back once again, and we only have a few minutes left to clear up. Was it $2,700? I think I heard somebody say.
Yes, $2,780 to go on the original match, and we got it cared for. I can't leave that money sitting around. It's just too hard for me to do that. So I'm just asking you. You know, you love the program. You've been listening for a long time, especially those of you who are brand new donors. You may be longtime listeners, and you haven't had a chance to give. Man, this is a great opportunity for you to stand with us. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. We've got 6 lines open right now, so it's wide open. The call will take you a couple of minutes. You don't have to have the money in hand right now. You're making a pledge. And remember this, really important. At $1 a day or more, we are going to give you our most popular gift ever, which is the Bible Stick. It has the New Testament loaded on a little MP3 player. And again, it's totally self-contained, has headphones and a battery. Maybe you give it as a gift if it's not for you. Maybe that college student that needs God's Word. It's the word-for-word Bible, New Testament, NSV version with music, sound effects, dramatized, very easy to listen to. And that's yours as a thank you gift for your $1 a day or more gift. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
You know, sometimes you think about what's at stake, and it's really the value system of a country. Ours is being challenged from so many levels right now, and because the biblical worldview is not the consensus anymore in the country, we have to take special care to pass conservative, traditional, biblical values onto our children. We need to, first of all, pass them on to the people that are leading us and making decisions for us. Parents need to pass them along to their children. Christian educational organizations need to be passing them. And so that's what we feel like we're part of that network. We are a broadcast ministry. We are on the internet. We publish articles, and Kerby publishes books, and we can pass this truth on, but we have to have some support to do it. We do a lot with the money that does come to us and the gifts that are given. It's amazing how that is multiplied with our ministry. But we're asking right now for you to be part of that team to help us do those things.
You know, one of the questions that we've asked so often, Penna, is what kind of world will your children and your grandchildren actually inherit? And all three of us have one thing in common. We are grandparents.
That's right.
Now, some have more than others, but nevertheless, but nevertheless, we all look in the eyes of those grandchildren and we say, what kind of world are we giving to them? And how do we turn that around? And we turn that around with the kind of things we've talked about here today, whether it's Jay Richards educating people about socialism and what Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, free college tuition, all sounds real good until you start adding up the cost and recognizing the burden on our kids and the loss of religious liberty. We talked with Jim Denison about everything from the attempt of the secular culture to shut down a movie called Unplanned, or just even the need to know how to respond to those who said, I've given up on my faith. How do I respond to that? And that's the kind of material that we make available every single day here on Point of View.
You know, I've said this so many times before. It's not just the radio program. That's really the bedrock of the ministry. But frankly, there's more content on the pointofview.net website than just about any other ministry I know of. It is just rich with great articles and a lot of archives and all kinds of other material. And in some ways, that almost overshadows the radio because it is information, Kerby, that people can absorb, download, look at it at their leisure. And so I think that's another part of the whole package here, that you need to stand with us as we are continuing to provide content-rich material that has a biblical value, has the biblical viewpoint. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And we have the century level. You can just give us a quick little brief of that. What's that mean, a century level at $100 a month or more?
The century level takes you just to a different giving level. People that can do more than the basic $30 a month, we have a century club for you. And it'd be $100 a month, and you would get this you get actually a CD or a DVD of the New Testament plus 2 Bible sticks.
MP3 disc of that goes to the family of a soldier, and then 2 of the Bible sticks also go. It's a military version
those
of it.
Go to the soldiers' families.
Those go to the soldiers themselves in the field,
and then everybody gets their own Bible stick.
Yes, and every through the chaplains in the field. So that's $100 a month or more. That's the Century Club.
Yeah,
so,
I love that one because you get to give. When you're giving to Point of View, you're also giving to others out there serving us. So that's
right.
Great. And I just want to mention that Point of View the website is very robust. And one thing about our radio program is you can go back and listen to any program. It's really easy to find the shows. And so even the 2-hour or 3-hour broadcast every day is available at your leisure.
Well, and again, those are some resources that people sometimes fail to understand.
Yeah.
One of the other ones we didn't mention is, of course, not only get the Bible stick at any level, but you also get the Outlook magazine. Penna, you write for that. I write for it. And so that gives you material arriving in your box. And, of course, at the $50 level, you get these booklets, or at the $100 level. So there's all sorts of levels that we've already talked about. But most importantly, we just need you to make that phone call right now.
We do indeed. It's 800-347-5151. We still have some match money on the table. Before we go off the air at the top of the hour, could you please give us a call and stand with us? We need your help. We're not afraid to ask because we know what we're doing is in the center of God's will. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151.
You know, one of the things we've talked about this week, Brad, is that sometimes we have these, you can't make this stuff up. And one of them tomorrow, when we talk with Kelly Shackelford, is this woman was reading the Charlie Brown Christmas and told to stop.
Oh, man.
And when I first saw that, I said, this is April Fool's week. I bet he's trying to trick me. And then I saw Todd Starnes and everybody else. So we're going to talk about that one tomorrow. And again, every single day we have another story about just things that you just can't believe. And it's just the world that we live in. And that's why, without hesitation, we ask for you to join with us and to help us continue to, first of all, educate you about these issues and bring some of these stories. But as we'll talk about tomorrow, Liberty, First Liberty is just winning all their cases. Just amazing. And they win these simply by going to the Constitution and going to these authorities and saying, you're going to violate the Constitution. You really don't want to meet us in court, do you?
Yeah, and we live in a country where we want to not have to go to court about some of these things.
Yeah, that's true.
And the idea that, people are out there trying to challenge people's rights to practice their faith in their job or whatever, that needs to be exposed. People need to understand that they can fight back.
As we wrap things up, here's the phone number here, 800-347-5151. We're actually looking for 7 of you to call right now, 800-347-5151. We'll rejoice with whatever you can give at 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
And either way is a good way for you to reach us. Even though we're going off the air, we'll still answer those phone calls, 800-347-5151. Of course, the website, 24/7.
Match expires today, so we need to hear from you.
Need to hear from you. Andrew and Steve, thank you for your help. One last time, 800-347-5151. See you here tomorrow.
In America, the time for sitting on the sidelines is over. We've thought that insanity could only last so long, that our flirtation with ideas that have failed over and over would reach its end. But the longer we wait for common sense to return, the worse things get. Today, we don't even know the difference between men and women. People are seriously proposing a government takeover of just about everything: our cars, our food, our homes and offices. In a nation built on hard work, sacrifice, and self-reliance, a shocking percentage of our neighbors now look to Washington, D.C. to do just about everything. The impulse towards socialism is a clear and present danger to our survival. So what are you going to do about it? I know you can't do it alone, but together, with you as a member of the Point of View Truth Team, we can make an impact. Time is running out on our matching challenge that ends tonight at midnight. Join now online at pointofview.net or by phone 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Join now. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.